Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the media on this occasion of this petition that has been filed, one by Consumers Federation of Kenya and another by myself, seeking to stop the so-called the framework agreement, the cooperation framework agreement between Kenya and the United States on health. Now, this particular issue, at the heart of this whole thing, is what happened in this country on 27th of August 2010. When we got the new constitution of Kenya, and there was a major shift. In the old constitution, executive sovereign power resided in the president. In the new constitution, sovereign power resides in the people. At the heart of this petition is the question, to whom does health data belong? And the answer emphatically is that they belong to each individual. And if health data has to be harvested for any reason to be shared beyond the medical facility, there needs to be a proper mechanism where every individual gives their consent to have their data shared. We are not subjects, we are citizens. We are not subjects of the president. We are citizens of the Republic of Kenya, and our data belongs to each one of us individually. So at that point alone, I thought that what was done in Washington was totally bad. Number two, when you look at the contract, if I can remember some parts of the agreement, you find that Article 19 claims it is not a treaty. But if you look at the obligations in there, they bind the government. That's a very, very deceptive attempt to put this agreement outside the framework of the Constitution. You know very well that Articles 2, Clause 6 say that any treaty ratified by Kenya is part of the Kenyan law. And that 2 Clause 5 says that instruments of international law will apply, principles of international law will apply to Kenya. But when you say it is not a treaty, it's outside that arrangement, then what are we dealing with? How can the government purport to act outside the purview of the law or the Constitution and other statutes? Then if you go to Article 5, Section 5, Clause 7 of the same agreement, it says something to the effect that Kenyan law is expected to apply. It doesn't say Kenyan law will apply. They say Kenyan law is expected to apply. Why should Kenyan law be expected to apply and not just to apply? Basically, the agreement has been drafted in a manner that it's put outside the framework of the law. And whoever did that intentionally, because he knows that the contents of the agreement, if implemented, have major impact on the Constitution. It contravenes the Constitution in extreme ways. For example, health is a devolved function. There's been no involvement of the Senate, no involvement of the other organs. You go ahead, you find that when you look at the question of Chapter 12, public finance, there are major agreements on finances, committing the Kenyan government to pay, I think it's 10, then 20, then I think 30, 40, then 50 billion shillings over that period of year incrementally. Who has appropriated that money? Why is the government going to get that money? You go further, you find that there are thousands of employees, the people who are going to be recruited to work under this arrangement. And then in 2028, when the arrangement expires, they are supposed to transfer to the government. Where is the Public Service Commission? How do we get sure of that? Or where are the commission, the Council of Governors, who are supposed to take on these people? So we cannot just do things like there's no procedure. You go back to issues of sovereignty of this republic, you find that the instrument is couched in a language that makes Kenya a client state of the United States of America. So, among these things, and you know, health data is very important. Those of you who remember, in the very America, about what happened to black people, the Tuskegee syphilis research, where they subjected black people to syphilis trials and stuff like that. What guarantee do we have that we are not opening up Kenya to be a laboratory of guinea pigs for experiments on various things? It happened just the other day in the US. Some of those people have just died recently. It's not that something that happened long time in history. So with that kind of experience whereby black people have been used as guinea pigs for research and then documented, we cannot just sit back and say that we are going to share our information with the Americans without the guarantees that the laws of Kenya provide. So that attempt to put this thing out of the law is good. It was not good, and I'm happy that the courts have stood up and injuncted this particular process. And so, in February, we shall go back to slug it out, but principally, health data belongs to the individual, not to the state. And the state cannot commoditize it. It cannot be made into a commodity for trade. It is only the individual who is affected who can surrender their health data to a third party who is not the medical facility where they are being attended to. And that's something that needs to come out, and that's something you'll not see in the contract. We are being treated like commodity, like property of the state, just like what we are seeing with securitization of whatever they are securitizing now, taxes and whatever. We are being treated like that. And that is why I personally went to court to reject that kind of arrangement and to demand that the domestic law is applicable to any contract, and any treaty that is signed must be subject to the Constitution of Kenya. It must submit to parliamentary supervision. It must submit to judicial oversight. It must submit to the Bill of Rights and things like those. It cannot just be that because we need some money, therefore we sell our birthright. And we talk of birthrights and selling birthrights. I'm sure you remember the story of Esau and Jacob in the Bible, where Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Exactly what Ruto is doing, trying to sell a birthright for a bowl of soup of some 300 or whatever billion US dollars. So I am most grateful, and I promise that this is going to be contested heavily, and if need be, the final decision might come out of the Supreme Court. This is a matter of life and death. This is an existential threat to the identity of the republic and to the fundamental rights of the individual as a human being with the dignity that must be respected and obeyed. So unless you have a question, I will beg to stop there.
Can it be?
President William Ruto, for whatever reasons, operates largely outside the law. He runs, if you look at his budgets, he's running around with things, he's borrowing money outside the law. And he's now selling the family silverware for the sake of supporting budgets and things like those. I wouldn't construe why it's looked at, but if you look at his agenda is unhinged. He thinks that he can throw money at Kenyans and resolve our problems. So that unhinged agenda is the reason behind which we end up with this kind of excesses. But for whatever it is, for whatever reason the president wants money, there's a law in this country, and I think that the rule of law is paramount. And come rain, come sunshine, the law of Kenya will stand. And there's no end that can justify disregard for the law in this country. So if he wants money, let him go to Article 220. He can borrow money the way the Constitution allows it, 221. So we cannot just come up with budgets that are extra-constitutional and begin implementing them and saying that we are implementing budgets. And yet, if you look at the money they are talking of, compared to what is being lost, stolen from this country, we don't need that money. If we just tightened our nuts and they dealt with our public assets well, we don't need that money over the... If you divide that money over five years, doesn't amount to a lot of money. So it's money you can do without. And so it's not money that you can be able to say that it's a matter of life and death. And so I think that our health systems can finance themselves. They should get rid of this thing called SHIF and SHA, these scams, and come back and look at the facility improvement funds that we have set up in the Senate, and our health systems will run. But trying to look for this kind of blood money is something that I don't think we can accept, whereby basically you are killing an entire nation to surrender money. But I know that William Ruto is a postcard president that the West would like to have, because when they ask him to jump, he asks, how high do I jump? He has nothing else he's doing in this country other than to serve interests that he thinks will perpetuate his stay in power.
And now that it is obvious Ruto is violating the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, can the Senate file an impeachment motion and kick him out of office?
Well, it is possible, but an impeachment motion has to come from the National Assembly. The Senate only sits like a trial court. But all said and done, there are grave violations of the Constitution. And I think there was a petition that was filed by some group some time back that enlisted about 40 violations of the Constitution that the President has committed. And so I think what we need to do is to give our Constitution life by standing up and pushing, and not necessarily waiting for the institutions to act, but acting as citizens to make sure that we are able to get rid of this curse called William Ruto before he makes us past tense in this country.